Today is Sunday, December the 18th, 2016. And today I want to talk about the situation going on right now in Aleppo. Now, there's a lot of varying opinions on it. People are all over the map with it. You know, I've seen different headlines from different news sources online. Some say that Aleppo has fallen, and some say that Aleppo has now been taken over by Assad. Now, if you don't know who Assad is, that is the democratically elected president of Syria. He's a president of the sovereign nation of Syria. So how can Aleppo, on one hand, have fallen, on the other hand, be under control of the president? That does not make sense. But before I get into tearing it down a little bit and raising some questions, and you know what, really, I have more questions than I do answers, but I do have some answers, and I do have a different perspective on it that may give you a different point of view. But before we get into all of that, what I want to do right now is play a clip from Obama. And in this clip, he's pretty clear with who he blames for the whole situation going on right now in Aleppo. So without further ado, go ahead and roll it.
For years, we've worked to stop the civil war in Syria and alleviate human suffering. It has been one of the hardest issues that I've faced as president. The world, as we speak, is united in horror at the savage assault by the Syrian regime and its Russian and Iranian allies on the city of Aleppo. We have seen a deliberate strategy of surrounding, besieging, and starving innocent civilians. We've seen relentless targeting of humanitarian workers and medical personnel, entire neighborhoods reduced to rubble and dust. There are continuing reports of civilians being executed, and these are all horrific violations of international law. Responsibility for this brutality lies in one place alone, with the Assad regime and its allies, Russia and Iran. And this blood and these atrocities are on their hands.
Okay, so you see who he blames. He's saying, hey, it's Russia, it's Iran, and it's Bashar Al Assad and his regime. That's who to blame for the violence in Aleppo. But my thing is this. Okay, how can you blame Assad? Explain to me what Assad has been doing. Now, like I said earlier, Assad is the actual president. He was elected. So when you say Assad regime, what you really mean is a government of Syria. That's what you mean, because to call Assad's government a regime is the equivalent of calling Obama's government a regime. You know, it's the government of Syria and their president. That is who you're trying to blame. Now, if you're going to blame them, then how can you do that? Because you do understand that they are fighting ISIS. That's who we should be fighting, but I'll get to that a little bit later. Now, they're fighting ISIS. Russia's also fighting ISIS. Russia and Iran and China, by the way, it's kind of funny how you want to be so hawkish on Russia and Iran, but not so much on China. And you're not always hawkish on Iran. You're always hawkish on Russia, but never really on China and not so much on Iran. But China's over there as well. So let's not get that confused. And the thing about it is, China, Russia, and Iran are in Syria on behalf of the Syrian government by invite. They were invited there by the president and the government of their sovereign country. So how can you say that they shouldn't be there? Really, the U.S. is not there by invite. The U.S. is over there managing our specific interests. We have certain little groups that we've armed over there that we want to make sure so-called do the right thing. So in reality, we're not necessarily fighting ISIS as much as we're trying to manage our groups to fight against whoever they want to fight against. That may be ISIS and that may be Bashar Al Assad. And I think some of that is happening. We're over there fighting a proxy war with Syria through these so-called rebels, maybe the Kurds and stuff like that. I know a lot of people say that the Kurds are the good guys and whatnot, but is that true? Are all of them the good guys? I mean, we over there arming people. Really, we should stay out of it. And if we're going to fight, let's fight on behalf of the Syrian government and have them request us to come over there to help them with their problems. So we over there trying to say that we're helping the Syrian people, but are we really? We're over there to protect our own interests. And that's the whole problem with it. And I've seen a lot of these videos that have come out from Syria. You know, these so-called, these journalists, activists, or whatever you want to call them, you know, they're having these last messages and whatnot on social media. And by the way, if Aleppo is so war-torn and just devastated, how are you able to have all this infrastructure and ability to be able to be on Twitter and stuff taking high HD video. How is that possible? I mean, I don't get it. Like, how can you have a war-torn area with all this infrastructure that's able to get you HD 1080p video all around the world? You got 13 million followers on your Twitter. These guys are like rock stars over there, even though they claim to be so-called fighting for the Syrian people. But I digress. My point is that you have a lot of things over there that don't make any sense. You have things that don't make any sense. People over there on social media, you got people trying to blame Bashar Al Assad for the problems that are going on right now in Syria, but he's the president. And you got the U.S. over there saying that Assad is to blame. Everyone is to blame except for the actual people that are involved that are making the situation bad, which are the terrorists and Western powers that are over there, not at the behest of the Syrian government. I don't think we should play global cop. Shout out to my man on Facebook for giving me that term. I think we should be just minding our own business. If someone invites us to a place to help them with whatever they got going on, then it should be up to us to decide whether that is a good thing for us to do or a bad thing for us to do. We shouldn't just be going over to places at our own behest to say, hey, people over here, they need our liberation, and we're going to go over there and liberate them. And if they don't do what we want, we're going to go over there and wreak havoc anyway. That's not the correct way to be. And like I said earlier, the whole thing about the mainstream media, they play a part in this as well. Because like I said, I've seen certain news websites and news sources that have conflicting reports. Some say that Aleppo has completely fallen. Some say that Aleppo has fallen into the hands of Bashar Al Assad, and some say that Aleppo is now controlled by Assad and Syria. So at a certain point, which one is true? I think they're all true and said in different ways. Some ways may be kind of libelous in the way that it's written, but at the end of the day, I think what they mean to say is that Aleppo has fallen back into the hands of the Syrian government rather than in the hands of ISIS, because that's the whole big thing here. You have ISIS, also known as Daesh. It's like a radical Islamic group that's fighting against the state. There's also another word for those Muslims that fight against the rulers. I forget what the name is, Kushites or Kurites or something like that. If you know what that word is, let me know in the comments below. But they're fighting against the ruling power, against the king, against the actual government. See, that's ISIS. That's what they're doing. So you're on one side or the other. You're either pro-Syrian government or you're anti-Syrian government. Who's anti-Syrian government? You have ISIS, maybe other rebel groups that want to overtop the Syrian government. That's it. Maybe you can even call the U.S. anti-Assad or anti-Syrian government, even though they purport themselves to be for the Syrian people. Maybe they're against the Syrian government. They want to just be able to install whoever they want. But I don't understand why we keep on doing that, because it does not work. I don't understand the greater picture. Maybe it's because of oil and power. I've heard that they want to put a pipeline through Syria. That could be part of it. So they want to destabilize it, so they're better able just to get it through there with the least amount of resistance, right? To break it up into little statelets so they can control, meaning Western powers, they can control those statelets, and then they'll be able to control the flow of oil, natural gas, or whatever they want to extract from their region. That is all I can really think about as to the reason why they would go through all this trouble to overtop a president who was elected democratically. So what do you think? Do you think that Bashar Al Assad is the bad guy here? Do you think that he is the person that needs to be overthrown rather than trying to focus on the actual terrorists that in ISIS, who are wreaking havoc all over the Middle East and Europe and here in the USA? Because really, as I close, it ain't too much more to it. It's pretty cut and dry. You got really two sides, and then you have belligerents that are kind of like staging their own little battles and wars in between that have nothing to do with either side. They're kind of in between, claiming to be on one side or the other, but really they're fighting for their own interests. The two sides that matter in the war are Daesh, ISIS, and also the Syrian government. That's it. Anybody else, either you're going to be invited by the Syrian government or invited by ISIS or fighting alongside ISIS or fighting to the same cause as ISIS has. You could say that you're not either one, but at the end of the day, it doesn't make sense. You're going to help one side or the other. I think the U.S. being over there is prolonging the reign of ISIS by not really toppling them, because you're arming people that kind of are ISIS sympathizers. So I think the best way to go ahead and get rid of ISIS would be to just eliminate ourselves from the equation altogether. Just pull out and go back in if we're invited by the Syrian government. And that's it. But do you think that would be an effective strategy to go forward to defeat ISIS and also to resolve the whole thing going on over there in Syria? Because at the end of the day, the fight will come to a conclusion, at least this fight here. Somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose. Now, if the Syrian government wants us to be over there to help them come to that conclusion, then I'm with it. But do you think we should be over there at all, even if they invite us? That's pretty much all I got to say about it. You know, whatever your comments are, let me know in the comments below. This video was more about raising a lot of questions rather than giving a lot of concrete answers. I think what I said was the best thing to do, but I understand the complex nature of the Middle East. It's not really that complex when you talk about it, when you get down to the core, which is Islam, but it's complex as far as all the factions over there, all the little groups, all the tribal wars, all the geopolitical games, all the big powers over there fighting each other. It's very complicated. So I like to be able to get your perspective on the whole situation and how to resolve it going forward. So like I say, whatever your comments are, let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.